All right, we're back. America F1 is back. The holidays, I hope everyone had a safe and glorious Christmas and enjoying this new year. And I hope all the things that you said you were going to do this new year, you're sticking with them. And all your resolutions, you're not. You're not going back already. I hope, and I pray. Scott, how was your holiday?
Great. My wife and I went down to Washington, D.C. We went down to Philadelphia, some quality time with family. And then we spent a bunch of time plotting what F1 races, experiences XO was going to next year, what paddock clubs, what teams. Um, I also did a little planning on where I was going to drive some race cars next year. So we figured that all out. I think we're all set for next year. Maybe we'll add one more, maybe Japan, but I think we're set.
I might go to Japan too. I might do that one too. So we're both gonna go. We're both gonna hook up in Monza, and then we're doing the Dutch Grand Prix. That's right before that one, and then we're thinking about either Monaco because a couple of my kids haven't been to Monaco, so they want to go to Monaco. So either Monaco, and I want to take my son to Japan just because he wants to go to like Tokyo and go to all the Godzilla stuff. So we might do that.
We've got four paddock clubs coming up. We've got Ferrari and Austin and Monza. And then right now we have Mercedes at Qatar and Abu Dhabi.
How much of your Mercedes gear are you putting in the back of your closet?
Well, I can't exactly where it says 44, but most of it I'll probably get to use.
Yeah.
Most of it doesn't have a number, so I think I'll be okay.
Well, today we're going to talk about on America F1, and we're glad to be back in the new year, and the podcast room is coming along, and probably the next time or sometime before the new season, you'll get to see the new podcast room. And I'm so excited to not only bring it to you, but I'm so excited to have everything already ready and set up and just walk in the room and it's ready to go. I won't have to set it up. It'll be there, just living. And I can't wait. So today we're going to talk about Senna. Senna is on, there's a new documentary series and it's on Netflix. And me and Scott have both watched it and we're going to compare and contrast it to the regular real life Senna. And is it worth watching? Because not everybody has Netflix. So you might have to go to your friend's house or you might have to illegally pirate it, but we're not condoning and saying you should do that. But if you do, that's your business. But we're going to give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down here at America F1.
Yeah, America F1. America F1. It's a golden run. America F1.
Scott, we just have these great openings. I definitely think when I watch all these shows about people doing F1, our show has the best opening. It just does. It just does.
It does, but I'm biased.
It just does. And it has the best host. We're the best. We're the best. We're the best.
You certainly are anyway. I like being a guest every now and then.
Oh, Scott, I'm watching this Senna documentary, right? It was really a drama-mentary. I think that's what they call it. It's like half drama, half documentary. And I was in my mind, I'm comparing it to that famous Senna documentary. And I like the documentary probably more. This one, there were some things I didn't know, like this whole thing with Martin Brundle. I didn't know that. Why don't you tell me about this Martin Brundle rivalry that I really didn't know Senna had?
Sure. They were major rivals in F3. Brundle had the money. He was the English boy, so he had the backing, he had the sponsorship, he had the crowd. But Senna had the talent. And that was the difference. Martin Brundle was a good driver. Senna was a generationally talented, perhaps once in a lifetime driver. But he had to overcome problems with his equipment where he wasn't really racing with the best equipment, and Brundle was. And, they talk a lot about that. but eventually he did overcome that. But it was an uphill battle because, as you know, you can be a great driver, but if you are racing in lousy equipment with a bad engine, it's going to be difficult to beat a driver even that is not as good as you are. So there was definitely that. And Brundle, like many drivers, can be plenty dirty when they want to win.
Yeah, it showed that there was a little bumping of the tires and a running people off the road a little bit. And back then in that era, it was a lot more dangerous when you did that.
A lot more dangerous. Yeah, I mean, F1 until much more recently was very dangerous if you crashed. Now we expect drivers, as a matter of course, to walk away from crashes unscathed or with very minor injuries, except perhaps at the corner complex in back of you, Eau Rouge and Radillon, onto the Camel Straight. But other than perhaps that corner, where cars can get T-boned at the top, most corners we expect drivers will walk away. But back then, no.
No, yeah, it looked super dangerous when I was watching that. I was like, "Whoa!" I didn't know Martin Brundle had it in him like that. I got a little bit
He did.
personally. I have a little bit more respect for him now. I
Yeah.
was like, I didn't know he was kind of that ruthless.
You sort of have to be to succeed in the racing game, especially back then. Yeah.
What did you think about how they described the women in his life?
It was a total. It was a docudrama. This was a show that was made by Brazilians for Brazilians, and this is a god. This is a deity in Brazil. This is a national treasure on the level of Pele. When Senna died, there were 3 days of national mourning, I believe, in Brazil, and 3 million people lined the street. So you have to take things from that perspective. So what they did is, this is a show that showcases only the best parts of Senna and the things that they want you to see. The things they don't want you to see, they don't show you. For example, talking about his relationships, several of his most significant relationships are nowhere in this movie. They talk about the wife, for example, but they then ignore his 4-year relationship with a 15-year-old girl that was right after the wife.
Which one, the second wife or the singer?
No, the singer. I don't think he was ever married to the singer. Actually, Jusha, but
he's never married to her, huh?
I don't believe he was. No, they dated on and off. But his 4-year relationship with a 15-year-old right after the marriage, really not discussed in the show.
Okay.
And then they talk about Jusha. They talked about his wife, who got divorced young because she wanted to stay in Brazil and he wanted to race in Europe.
Right.
So they sort of parted company. And so then they ignore a 4-year relationship with a 15-year-old when it started. They then talk about Jusha, the famous Brazilian TV star, which was a significant relationship in his life. And, it really didn't work out because, Jusha and him were so busy and had different lives that they never got to really hang out. But then after, they broke up, he then dated for the last year of his life. He dated a 20-year-old, Adrienne Galisteu, who traveled the world with him pretty much the last year of his life. The family apparently didn't like her, and she was really cut out of the movie altogether, the docudrama, whatever you want, telenovela, whatever you want to call it. Well, that's Mexico, but the bottom line is she was not covered.
What do you think about the relationship when they showed the professor and Alan Prost? If the newer generation doesn't know, Alan Prost was called the professor because he was very cerebral in his way to racing. He might have not been the quickest guy on the racetrack, but he definitely was probably one of the smartest. But what I saw watching this is that at that time, the head of the FIA was also French, and it seemed like they had a lot of collusion for Alan Prost over Senna.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, history has a tendency to repeat itself. The head of the FIA was reviled by everyone, and the current head is also reviled, so that's nothing new.
We'll talk about that on another show.
Yeah, but that is true. Look, this documentary or docudrama didn't portray Prost in a particularly favorable light. I will say the famous Senna documentary, before this, didn't portray him in a favorable light either. Actually, I think was much harsher on him than this one was even. Look, the two of them, you can't really have two lead champion drivers on the same team. It just doesn't really work. It never works. It never has worked on any team, and it probably never will work. And the two of them wanted the same thing. So of course they're going to come to blows. I mean, if racing drivers are inherently extraordinarily competitive people, they are driven to win. They're driven to, risk their lives to win. So what do you think is going to happen when two of them are on the same team? They're going to kill each other, whether it's Prost or Senna, Lewis and Nico. It just doesn't work very well. So yeah, he was depicted negatively, and he was depicted even more negatively in the last documentary. But again, this is definitely not. If you're looking for the complete picture of Ayrton Senna's life, this is not the show to go to. If you want to see great racing action, it's really good for that. They had a lot of great racing scenes. But if you want to find out, for example, anything about the circumstances behind Senna's death, the modifications that were made to the steering column of Senna's last Williams car, which the Italian Supreme Court determined broke, and that Patrick Head was responsible, the Williams technical director was responsible for that. That is nowhere in the show. They don't talk about the prosecutions of Adrian Newey.
Talk a little bit more about that, because they didn't talk about that at all. Like, they never mentioned Adrian Newey. You never saw him depicted in the film. And I was like,
yeah,
Adrian Newey should be a little bit, at least talked about a smidgen, because I thought this might have been one of his designs that didn't kind of work out, obviously.
Well, yeah, I mean, what happened, and Newey has talked about this before and has taken took some responsibility in his 2017 book, How to Build a Car.
Mm-hmm.
What happened is Senna didn't like the way the steering wheel was positioned. Well, he never liked the car. What happened to Williams in 1994 is they were king in 92, 93, because they had active suspension. And they were the king. They were the masters of active suspension. It was outlawed for 1994. And Newey couldn't figure out initially how to design the car properly to cope with an inactive, with a passive suspension, which we still have today in Formula One. And he takes full responsibility for that. The car was almost undrivable. And they were trying to keep up with a very fast Michael Schumacher in the Benetton. And he was having trouble doing it. And one of the things that really bothered Senna was that the steering wheel was too high, and he felt it needed to come down. The position was wrong. So they moved it down, but in doing so, they reduced the width of the steering column. And apparently it may have been too narrow. And it broke. Now, they're not sure. There's a controversy. Williams will tell you that it broke after the accident. The Italian Supreme Court, the Italian courts determined that it broke before the accident, that's what caused the accident, that it was too thin and that the metal snapped and it broke and caused the accident. And ultimately, the Italian Supreme Court, after many years of litigation, decided that. It decided Patrick Head was criminally responsible. They prosecuted Frank Williams himself, the owner of the team. They prosecuted the car designer, Adrian Newey, and they prosecuted Patrick Head, the technical director. And they all had trials. They were all acquitted initially, by the way, by the Italian courts. But eventually, years and years later, Patrick Head was found responsible by the Italian Supreme Court, but the statute of limitations had run. But they don't talk about any of that.
Yeah, they don't talk about any of that.
But Newey, actually, if you read his book, I mean, some of the quotes were brutally honest. I mean, he said things like, "Our lack of a safe checking system within the design office was exposed. What I feel the most guilt about, though, is not the possibility that the steering column failure may have caused the accident, because I don't think it did, but the fact that I screwed up the aerodynamics of the car. I messed up the transition from active back to passive and designed a car that was aerodynamically unstable, in which Ayrton tried to do things the car was not capable of doing. And he goes on and on. If only we had more time, is what he said. Time denied us that chance. So he doesn't quite take responsibility, but he sort of does.
Yeah. Definitely more than the other people did.
Yes, he does. And he expresses a lot of regret. He says, people ask me if I feel guilty about Ayrton. He said, I do. I was one of the senior officers in the team that designed a car in which a great man was killed.
Wow.
And, so Williams will always contest that it was the steering column, but he admits that a design failure at least contributed to the death.
Like when I watched this documentary, I thought, or dramamentary, let's get it, right here. I thought I could have watched, in hindsight, now that I've watched it, I could have watched the first 2 episodes and the last 2, and then the 2 in the middle, I could have just not watched at all, and it wouldn't have made any difference. What do you think?
I mean, I thought it was great entertainment. Look, I love racing scenes. I thought they did a great job with the racing scenes. They were fun. Some of the characters were fictional, like the British journalist who you wonder if she's a love interest,
right?
Love interest. No such person existed.
Yeah,
she's a fictional character.
I fully thought they were going to hook up.
So did I.
to watching it,
And we were waiting. I was waiting, and then of course
nothing happened.
But again, entertaining movie. Yes. Mm-hmm. If you want to find out who Senna really was,
no.
One of the greatest drivers of all time, unquestionably, if not the greatest, probably the fastest pace of any driver who ever lived. If you look at all the studies that adjust for car, but it doesn't really tell you everything about him. It gives you a very
it does. But the one thing I noticed, and I knew this before, obviously watching this, and he was that guy who, even though he had a 25-second lead on the second car, he just kept wanting to do fast laps and keep pushing the car. And there's that famous scene, even they had it in the movie, I think, when he was ahead at Monaco by like 35 seconds, and then he crashes. It's like, man, just dial it back, bro, and bring the car home.
Hey, remember Max in Austria in 2023, I believe, right? He's like 20-something seconds ahead, and he wants to pit and go for fastest lap. And, his pit is like, well, what are you doing? Don't do that. And he's like, what are you talking about, guys? It's good pit stop practice. I mean, that's the mentality. When you're talking about the most elite drivers who've ever lived, and I would put Max right in there with Senna and some of the top guys, they have a different mentality, and that is they don't know how to stop. They don't know how to take it easy. They don't settle for mediocrity. They want to go the fastest they can every single lap they bring it. And it's the same thing with Senna. It's the same thing with Max. It doesn't matter that they're ahead by 20 seconds. They want to win by 30 seconds, by 40 seconds, by 50 seconds.
Yeah, I remember earlier in this past season that Lando was winning one race. He won 4 races, and his first 4. And there's one race he was winning by like 30 seconds, and he just kept going faster the lap. And I was like, Lando's on one, and he's trying to prove, because I think Max was second or third, and he was trying to prove that today I am untouchable. No one can beat me. I will get every ounce of speed out of this car every lap, and there's nothing anybody can do about it, and I'm putting my stamp on this. And I was like, that was kind of Senna-esque. That's what I thought in my brain. I was like, this is kind of Senna-esque. I hope he does not crash.
He did that in Zandvoort, I believe, and I think he pushed very hard in Abu Dhabi too, if I'm not mistaken. He sort of thwarted Ferrari's chance to get the constructors by himself single-handedly. Well, Max took out Oscar unintentionally. He certainly did not intend to do that. He didn't intend to take out to hurt McLaren. He just wanted to get ahead. But Lando did rise to the occasion in Abu Dhabi and actually bring it that time.
But as usual for Max, there was no room there and no one passes there. Give me a break. But that's going back to the 24 season. Anyhow, do you recommend Senna on Netflix? Should people go to their friend's house? Should they watch it if they can? If they have Netflix, if they don't have it, should they take the time to go to somebody's house and watch it?
Absolutely. I thought it was a fun movie to watch, and it has some great racing action. And if you like Senna, especially, why not?
Scott's giving it a thumbs up. Scott, out of 1 in 10, what number are you giving the Senna on Netflix movie?
Probably give it a 7.
I am going to agree with you. I'm going to give it a 7. I think the first 2 episodes were great. I think the last 2 episodes were great. I thought the 2 in the middle were okay. They were trying to fill it up with something because it is 6 hours. It's 6 episodes. And they're like 50 minutes long, I guess. So it is quite long compared to the regular Senna documentary, which I think is like 1 hour and 40 minutes.
Yes.
But this one, the guy who played Senna did a very good job. I thought the acting was pretty good. I definitely liked the race scenes were good, and we'll put up here how they did some of these race scenes because they weren't actually out in the car. It was like movie set stuff, and I have that footage, and I'm gonna put it up so you out there in the ether world can see it as we're talking about it. But we both recommend Senna on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, go see it. If you are on the fence, I recommend watching the first 2 episodes and the last 2 episodes. Scott recommends watching the whole thing through.
More racing, the better.
More racing, the better. And you heard it here first on America F1. Just remember to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you can be notified when there's a new episode of America F1. And we are going to do 3 shows this week. So we're back, baby. And you'll have something to watch and listen to on the way to work or on the way from work. Thanks. And
another one. Thank you. Another one. Thank you.
To America F.